Hi, this is Steve, and here are some more of my gaming vexes. Pull up a crate, mate. You want to know about this world? It's a rust-choked planet scarred by radiation storms and crumbling deserts. All that's left after generations of global warming and war. The beauty the old-timers talk about is long gone. Most folks live in the Corpo's high-tech settlements, the Arcos. They're gilded cages where you're born into debt and work your whole life to pay it off. You can leave, but your only other option is the wastes. Not much of a choice, is it? Then there are the wastelanders. Good people mostly, living in scattered camps and eking out a living with whatever they can find. They're vulnerable though, often with only one old mech between them for safety. But us? We're the Union. We live on our Union crawlers, huge walking settlements that carry our whole community. Our motto is simple: from each according to their ability, to each according to their needs. We share what we find. And what do we find? Salvage. We pilot our scrap-built mechs into the wasteland, tearing apart the old world for every usable bit of titanium and wiring. These mechs, mostly repurposed industrial tools, not fancy fighters. The salvage keeps our crawler running, buys us gear, and feeds our people. The wasteland is a dangerous place. Beyond the Corpos, there are raiders, mutated creatures, and worse still, biotitans, hideous flesh and machine beasts. Some say they came from the stars, and then there's the meld, alien things that ooze and assimilate. It's a tough life, but there's still hope. We're out here rebuilding, bit by bit, showing the Corpos there's another way. What stories they tell about us? Well, that's up to you, isn't it? Now, let's get moving.
Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of our Gaming Vexes, where we reflect on my ongoing efforts to run or at least play all of the tabletop role-playing games that are making my bookshelves creak and groan so ominously next to me. This time, we're talking about our experiences with Salvage Union, a post-apocalyptic mech ttrpg created by Leyline Press. I backed this on Kickstarter when it launched, as long-time listeners will know that I was, and still am, a fan of Battletech. Any game that offers the Battletech experience in a TTRPG format usually gets my attention. To hear our thoughts on MechWarrior Destiny from Catalyst Game Labs, you can go back to episode 23. Also on my shelf is Lancer from Massive Games. I'm sure I'll get around to it eventually. Apart from the very lovely core rulebook and 3 fully developed adventure modules, Leyline Press also offers a free Quick Start PDF and recently ran a successful Kickstarter to support production of a starter set with an introductory campaign, pre-made characters and guidance for new players and GMs. You can find more information about Salvage Union, its core book, adventure modules like Rainmaker and False Flag, and upcoming projects on the Leyline Press website. This podcast is generally known for being spectacularly poorly named. We're rarely vexed by the games we play, to be honest. However, at the start of the main discussion, I make a point of asking the team about their favourite type of game, crunchy, narrative or whatever. It'll become clear that no game is for everyone, and I want to be upfront about our gaming preferences from the start. Regardless of our grumbling, I encourage people to check out the game for themselves if they're at all interested. Once you've had the chance to play it, or if you've played it already and love it, please let us know how you found it. Finally, a few parish notices. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, please do consider leaving a positive review on your pod platform of choice. It helps people find us and lets us know that people are 1. Listening and 2. Aren't too hoarse from shouting at our poorly thought out pronouncements. If you do leave a review, let me know where it is so that I can thank you on the show. For those who want to go further in supporting us, we also have a Patreon. The podcast will always be free to listen to, but the Patreon helps to fund things like my current comparative testing of Forge and Squire Foundry hosting services. They've both got pros and cons, and I'll do a short segment covering my thoughts on a future episode. So, to Mark Waterhouse and Jonathan Webb, who've outed themselves as woke turds since the last episode, thanks very much. If you'd rather throw a few pennies our way as and when the mood strikes you, without the regular commitment of Patreon though, we've also set up a Ko-fi. You can find all the links in the show notes. Okay, salvagers, mount up. It's time to head out into the wastes. So we're going to talk about Salvage Union in a little bit of detail, I think. But first of all, we're going to go around the virtual room. We're going to bit of an introduction, who we are, who our character is in the game, and for reasons that will become obvious later, what's your favourite tabletop game and why? Just short. Could be like, oh, I love Pathfinder because it's really crunchy or whatever.
Oh, hi there. It's me again. I'm back. My name's Sam Zero Veil on all the socials. And my favourite game, I play games that you can create stories out of.
Okay.
I don't like rules-heavy games.
Okay.
So light story games.
All right.
I'm playing a character called Chunky, who's a salvager type character. I'd like to go around and pick up as many bits of scrap as you can. And my mech is called Chunky Boy Extreme.
But do you like a bit of crunch in there, or are you more on the sort of actually not so much side?
I'm on the not so much side. I'd much rather have a game where you could just create stories.
I'm Matt, Clownfist with a 1, an engineer with a pack of smokes and a very sticky and rusty old mech, which I've forgotten the name of, but it's currently accumulating sand somewhere in the desert. But I've got a new mech anyway. I like Call of Cthulhu, BRP, horror type games mostly.
Yeah.
Probably a bit of a traditionalist, but that's because I was in the deep freeze for quite a while.
So medium
crunch.
level crunch. Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
I'm John Cage, but I don't really sit on the medias, but that's what I'm on Discord. I'm a dichotomy as a GM. I like narrative lightweight games, Blade in the Dark being my go-to as a GM. As a player, I prefer more crunchy games, Ars Magica, Pathfinder, that kind of thing. It's a bit of a dichotomy for myself. I played Ghost. I was a Wasteland Scout, aka another sniper, which is a common theme for me in games. And my newer mech was called Duskwing. A shout out to another mech game because my mech was something we found that can fly, had a hover unit and a big railgun. So
cool. Makes you very happy. All right. So we've been playing Salvage Union for I think I was looking back. It's probably about 10 sessions, I think I want to say. So it's a reasonable amount of this, and we've been playing through so for Salvage Union there are 3 scenario packs or campaign packs out for it, and we're playing one called Rainmaker. And a lot of these campaign packs are essentially point crawls, but we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. But what we'll do is we'll go through the book and then we'll talk about what we like, what we struggle with, hence the fact that getting full disclosure about what sort of games we like, because again, recognising that not every game is for everybody, and that's all right. But we can talk about how we perhaps mismatch or where we align with how the Salvage Union game has been put together. First of all, let's talk about the look of the book itself. Has anyone got the hard copy? I certainly have. Has anyone else got a hard copy of it?
Sam.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book.
Yeah.
Very well laid out. I could say that as a professional.
There you go.
But everything is beautiful in it, and it's the cover is a Haynes manual, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very retro. It reminds me a bit of the old BattleTech sort of books they used to do in that cut up, the schematics, more 1980s vibes.
Yeah.
Which I guess is probably what they were going for, given the sort of underlying mechanics and stuff.
340 pages.
Is it US letter style?
It's US letter, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the same sort of format as Blades in the Dark and those sort of games. So yeah, so it's pretty cool. Looks cool anyway. And inside, as you say, apart from the first couple of pages which are handwritten, it's pretty clean.
I think that's a style they've chosen to go.
Yeah, I get you.
There.
Yeah, I just find that annoying. But anyway, because I don't read that stuff. Anyway, all right, okay. So if we go into the book from the start, the world building in the game is very light, isn't it? There's not much certainly in the game. It talks about there are these salvage unions, because essentially the idea is this is supposed to be a hopeful sort of game. This is about people coming together in a spirit of equity and collaboration and building a better world. But obviously there are the corporations who could be the bad guys, but not always. It doesn't really name a lot of the corporations. There's a bit of a thing around the meld, which are a bit like nanotech type things. The world building's pretty light.
I very much got Fallout vibes. You've got these mechs, and they're old school, a bit retro, a bit clunky.
Yeah. So it's supposed to it's post-apocalyptic. So I suppose the idea is that
Yeah.
there are higher tech levels in the past, and essentially you are, as you say, scavenging through the waste of this. But we'll talk more about mechs anyway in a bit, because I think it's quite a lot to. That's the heart of the game. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it struck me that you could use this with any particular type of world you want to use.
Yeah.
You could have desert worlds, you could water worlds, cyberpunky worlds. Yeah, you could make any sort of background system up you wanted to.
It's so light on details that you're not wedded to the setting.
Did you find that felt like an extra workload on you, Steve?
Not so much, because again, in Rainmaker, you don't need to know about the wider world. It's not one of those ones where there's tons of lore, because often you get tied up in that sort of thing. Battletech, for example, I think you feel like you've got to know that sort of stuff. I don't know about other mech games out there, but Rainmaker, and I haven't looked in detail at the other campaign packs, it sets out a map, and it gives you, these are the factions here, so it talks about corporations, for example, which are mentioned in the main rulebook. But no, it didn't feel, it's not Vampire the Masquerade, put it that way, in terms of lore and that sort of stuff, which I think I appreciate, really. I think it's an easier point of entry for players and for GMs, really. Okay, moving to the book, the introduction, they really talk about safety protocols, which I really like that, actually, because although we've all played together quite a lot, so we know where our comfort levels are and that sort of thing, but I really appreciate them putting that in a couple of pages, but at least they take the time to do that, which is good, I think.
It's quite common for the more recent publications. There's usually a 2-page in some description.
We appreciate that as woke turds. We think it's a good thing. So, there we go. Okay.
Modern.
These modern games. Okay, so the next bit then talks a little bit about how to play, but really we don't get into the rules until much later in the book. So the first really meaty part is the pilot bay. Okay, so this is where you create your pilot, and it's very straightforward. There are 8 steps. There's a really nice sort of flow chart that sort of takes you through it. Okay, all right, let's get into it. So in terms of characters, there's no stats as such in the game. Every pilot has hit points, which is always the same. Every pilot has a certain amount of what they call action points, which sort of fuel some of their abilities. But apart from their class or their role in the game, it's very much the same. And so the idea is that rather than stats, they have a few random tables, and there are a few sort of skills or abilities which distinguish them. I'm going to lay it open. What do you guys think?
I actually really like it conceptually, what they did. I love how the classes are laid out. You have base classes, and then you have advanced classes around them, and 2 different base classes lead to one of the advanced classes. I thought that was really nicely laid out. It was really nice themes, which was fantastic. The problem is, actually, mechanically, it's mostly irrelevant. All you get is these abilities that spend AP, which fundamentally, again, great conceptually, but as a starting character, you have 5 AP, and most abilities cost you 2. And you don't recharge that until you go back to base for a week. So you very quickly burn through that. So your trademark thing that defines you mechanically, for the most part, you can do twice, which feels very lackluster. It's great conceptually. The classes fit the theme of the game well, both the base and the advanced classes. It fits in with this whole post-apocalyptic salvaging. Fantastic. But your ability to actually represent your character's strengths and weaknesses mechanically is completely irrelevant.
Well, there's not a lot of differentiation in characters up front. So the character classes, you say, so there's the engineer, there's a hacker, there's a hauler. I think that's your character, isn't it, Sam? It's a hauler. Because in this game, it's all about going out into the wastes and collecting stuff. Because stuff, scrap, salvage is what you use to buy stuff to increase your mech abilities. Also, and we'll talk more about the crawler in a bit, because there's quite a lot tied into that one. Salvager, obviously better at collecting salvage, a scout and a soldier. So these are almost like advanced classes. But to start with, as you say, you get your hit points, you get your ability, you get a couple of pieces of kit. So we've already talked about, you get maybe a heavy object to hit people with, or a pair of subclasses or something. Then you get things like your call sign, your background, and your motto, and we'll talk a little bit more of those in a second. You get a keepsake, which is just a thing you carry around with you, and then you choose your appearance, and an ability. depending on your character class. That's it.
The lack of differentiation annoyed me a bit because I'm a mech pilot, but am I tall? Am I strong? Am I quick? Am I slow? There's no differentiation whatsoever. So when you're out of the mech doing stuff, then that all becomes moot. It's like John said, you've got your sort of limited pool of action points to use on some particular abilities, but other than that, everyone is effectively pretty much the same. It would be nice if there was at least some degree to which you could sway the mechanic role by having a particular trait.
Those abilities that you get are very narrow, specific type of skill set. And I was quite disappointed with the fact that you can't influence dice rolls in any way. We'll get onto the dice mechanic a bit later. I know this is a conscious design decision by the team who designed it for various reasons, which we'll also get onto, I suppose, at a later point.
Yeah.
But it just makes everything just so random.
Okay, so in a lot of games, something like Call of Cthulhu or BRP, you start off with a lot of skills, or a number of skills which differentiate you when you've got your stats, and you don't really change that much. So you might get a few extra skills or some extra percentages, but really what you get at the end is pretty much what you got at the start. Whereas in this game, the progression is relatively quick. When you go into downtime, there's a real sort of specific cadence to the way the game works. You get some skill point, or a skill point, so you can get an extra ability. So you are picking up new abilities relatively quickly.
But the problem is you don't have the points to use those abilities, because we found out midway through, we didn't do this in the first few weeks when we had our first couple of downtimes. Your AP and your hit points go up a little bit. So I think by the end of session 10, we had 7 ability points instead of 5. My ability still cost me 2 AP to use per instance, and as a scout, my first one was an initiative-based thing. And initiative is every round you roll initiative. I've got 7 AP now. I can do 3 rounds of initiative and then have 1 spare, fundamentally. As a somewhat of a mechanical power gamer, I'm going to...
Your thing, there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay.
Yeah, I like playing snipers. And I was like, I'm going to play a sneaky sniper. I'm going to have a mech that's going to be a sniper as well. That was my thing. That's why it's called Ghost. Apart from getting the good sniper rifle, I wasn't any better at using it. I could hand it off to any other team member, really, and they'd just be as good at it.
Yeah. And we did make some changes. We'll talk about things like call sign and background, etc. later. Okay, so the idea is, I say that as you go along, you get better. I will say this is a game, if you like looking through lists of equipment and trying to come up with optimal builds, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of adrenaline injector you can put into your mech which will refresh your AP or so. That's the sort of thing you could imagine being in there. But I think this is a game that's about building. But I think if you're looking at let's say a 10 episode campaign, which they talk about, by the end of it you're not so much better. I think you'd have to play a really quite long campaign to get a lot of differentiation skills.
My biggest issue here was this is more of a tactical war game with resource management rather than a traditional role-playing game. There's very little role-playing so far.
Fundamentally, it's mission. You go on a mission, you have a downtime. Same with Shadowrun, same with Blades in the Dark. You often find limited opportunities for role-play because you're in a mech and it's focused on machines and machines shooting one another. It's part. I think it's a genre. I wouldn't say that's a specific issue with Salvage Union, per se. And I think it's also what leads to the blandness, shall we say, of the pilot classes in abilities. Again, I can't remember. I haven't played BattleTech for a long time, but Lancer I played recently. Again, that system, the pilot class itself is an afterthought. It's all about the mechs as well. And this is the same. So it might be a genre thing.
That's fair. And I think we found that when we played or had to go to MechWarrior Destiny, that was the same sort of thing, that actually, if you're playing a mech game, and this is a mech game, let's be honest, there's a big picture of a mech on the front. What do you do when you're outside the mechs? Maybe it's that. And I think if that's what you like, then why not? Go for it.
I will say, though, we had a good out-of-mech experience when everything went wrong for the first time, infiltrating a corporate archipelago, because, again, your pilots don't have skills. So the sneaky person, me, as a scout, completely failed to sneak up on people and got us into a world of trouble. That was an interesting out-of-mech experience. And then we also had sneaking into a water trading station. I don't want to give away too much.
That's spoilers
for the,
that's not in the scenario. That's just trouble you got into yourselves. That was nothing to do with me.
So we went in, out of mech, had chaos. Again, that wasn't actually bad rolls. That was just us missing a trick sort of thing, getting in a lot of trouble. So we did have some
Mistakes were
good
made.
out of mech experience,
Yeah.
but that wasn't supported by the rules put that much. I think that was good GM, good group, just having fun. So being lightweight with the rules. Maybe that's the intention.
Well, I think it is, and we'll talk about the mechanic, and I think it'll become clear to people listening about how that works. But again, looking at their design decisions, we've got a design decisions document we've pulled together, which we're referring to. But they specifically talk about narrative focused play, and it's so in that sense, it's quite old school. I think if you think about something like Old School Essentials or Swords of Wizardry or any of those BX clones,
It feels OSR. It feels
yeah,
OSR.
yeah. So there's no or very few skills. Obviously, in OSR, you got your hit dice and that improves over time. In this, it doesn't really. You might get a reroll, but that's about it. But actually, it is very much about that narrative story type stuff.
So, quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
Do you think running this on the Foundry platform then was not that useful to you because it was more narrative? Do you reckon we would have maybe got better use out of it without the virtual tabletop, maybe, and so we focus more on the narrative?
I don't think so. I think we've had situations where stuff has happened and then we've built a story around it. For example, infiltrating that basement and it was full of frogs. We had endless fun talking about people getting lashed with tongues by frogs. But that's just us. That's just us getting the fun out of things when we've played. But no, I don't think so. I think in some ways I've made it a bit crunchier by having a battle map with some squares on it, just so you get a sense of actually positioning, because that again they specifically say that they want that theatre of the mind, abstract ranges stuff. I think if you were doing that purely theatre of the mind, I think that personally I'd really struggle with that. So no, I think the tabletop was actually made life a lot easier from my perspective. So just to round off that, the pilot section, so talk about, you've got base classes, advanced classes, you can build up over time. You also got equipment. There are 6 tech levels in the game. So tech 1 is basically a can opener, pretty much. And tech 6 is lightsabers and laser blasters and whatever it might be. You start at tech 1. So really you are starting with not a lot of great stuff. You can find other stuff as you're wandering around. But yeah, you're pretty much stuck with that.
I was going to say, for tech levels, to give people a context, Tech 1 is pipe pistols from Fallout, Tech 2 is a pistol, Tech 3 is an assault rifle, and Tech 4 is a sniper rifle. So when we say we're going up in tech levels, this isn't going into extreme sci-fi levels. This is still the relatively
Tech 6,
reasonable tech.
Orbital Lance Controller. That's what you want in your life,
Yes,
isn't it?
But until you get to Tech 6, and for the most part, it's like, when you're genning up your characters as a starting thing, and you're like, what gear I got? And I want a sidearm. I can't get a basic pistol because that's Tech 2. So I'm going to get a pipe rifle, an improvised melee weapon. So it's really weird. That's why I went for a class with a weapon as part of its abilities.
Gotcha.
That was part of my motivation.
Gotcha. So equipment, and you did get a piece, which is quite easy to get hold of this stuff. And then we talk about the pilot table. So again, we talk about the call sign, which is things you always say. I always say this. And
well, that was
oh yeah, hang on. Call sign is, you're right. Thank you. Call sign. You've read this. It's cheating. Call sign is your name. Background, as you say, is where you came from. Keepsake is the thing you carry around with you. Motto is the thing you always say. Appearance, you randomise that. And then personality table. This is the AI for your mech, basically. We don't really play much about the AI. We just use the mechs as machines.
Did they have AIs? Did they have AIs in them? I didn't even realise that.
All AI systems. Yeah, okay. Oh yeah, okay, it's interesting. All AI systems. We've never done the role play with the... See, there's an opportunity we missed there. That could have changed the whole game. Your mech is supposed to have some sort of AI built into it. Hopeful and idealistic. Vaguely sadistic. I think that's quite good. That's not, I just made that up. That's not really one. Dangerously pragmatic. Anyway, all right. So from anyone else, thoughts on pilots?
Yeah, just pilots are just disappointing, I found.
Yeah, but if, as John says, actually they're a bit of a bolt-on, and it is more about what you do in the mech, then fair enough.
The problem was, you in the mech, you get yourself a push. Yes. You can push your roll.
Yep.
But as a pilot, you cannot do that. It makes it a lot harder.
Yeah.
No, I agree. If you had some sort of trait that allowed you to do something specific or push a roll in particular circumstances, or even spend like a penny, then that would maybe differentiate people a bit. So that
Yeah.
you could have a strong trait, fast trait, sneak trait, or whatever.
Anything like that at all, yeah. They did actually have and again, they talk about this in their design blog. They did have a push or try a push mechanic for pilots when they're out of the mech, but they decided not to go with it. And again, that brings the focus back onto mechs, because mechs can do more and they get more chances to get into trouble because the push mechanic has got a cost to it as well. Okay, all right. So yeah, they did the job. It's a frame for you to interact with the world. A few tweaks. That's about it, really. The next part is the mech workshop, and again, there's a really nice flow diagram. You get a certain amount of scrap to start with. That's the currency in the game, really. You get a mech chassis. So at tech level 1, you get to choose from a limited number. Your stats. So your stats are things like the amount of heat you can tolerate, the amount of energy points. So energy points are the equivalent of action points, so you spend energy points for your mechs to do stuff. And what else you got? Structure points, so the amount of damage you can take. And also things that this game is a lot about systems, modules, and how you trick out your mech, really. And again, that's intentional. They want you to really change your mech out between games. Each mech gets a quirk, something about it. It smells, it's sticky, whatever it might be. You describe your mech's appearance, and then you give it a name. And that is basically it. It would be, except there's zillions and zillions of systems and modules and stuff that you can do. So, thoughts in terms of the mech creation process. What did you think of that?
The ability to create new mechs is cool and quite easy. I found a little problem with doing it. It's a little daunting once you look at all the tables, but you can soon get into it fairly quickly, and it turns out to be easy.
And there is an online creator as well, I think, for Tech Level 1, Tech Level 2 mechs and pilots.
Yeah, that really helped. That made it very easy because it does all the number crunching for you, and it will tell you if you've put too much on your mech.
Yeah.
But those numbers aren't difficult, really, once you understand how they work.
But I think the website helps you learn how to do it, and that makes sense because it's just a very visual thing to do.
Really
Definitely
good
a plus point,
isn't it? Really good starting off point.
And the book itself, you've got 6 mech chassis to start with, some nice little line art drawings of each one of them, and each one has got a pattern, so like a sort of a loadout in terms of systems and modules. For example, it'll say for the mule chassis type of mech, which is about carrying stuff, there's what they call a hauler pattern, and it'll say this pattern is a legal Tech 1 build. So if you don't want to think about it, you just got to have one of them.
Pick up and play. It's very easy in that regard. Even the patterns have a little description, a bit of in-character description of what they use for and stuff, which is a little bit of world building. It can help.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I quite like the Amazona, which is like a hover drone type thing, made by Dron Tech Systems. Not many structure points in that one.
Yeah, I found the mechs really uninspiring, I must admit. Though I wasn't excited to get into any mechs. Even as we progressed and we got higher tech levels, we got more scrap, there wasn't anything like, I'm aiming for this mech. I want to get into this mech eventually. There was no progression goal.
Anyone else got any thoughts about that? So one of the things they talk about again in the design ideals was about what they call dynamic salvaging and mech customization. So basically the idea is essentially your mechs are disposable because you can break them down and sort of reclaim the scrap from them. And the idea is that it's all about don't get attached to your mech, you can break it down, get new stuff, you can buy stuff which is of a higher tech level, add that in.
They're disposable. That's very much OSR. Characters die all the time. In this, your mech can die, but you keep your narrative of your same character. So it gives the ability to continue a narrative without losing that, but still having player death effectively, having your mech blown up. And, so I can see what they tried to do, and it's good. But like I said, I found the mechs very uninspiring. And again, going back to the Tech Level 1 stuff, you don't really, your guns, I think you can have a medium range gun, everything else is close range.
But surely that's the impetus to go out there and get, because if you start off with great stuff, there's no real impetus to go out there and get, you think, I really wish I had a gun that could fire long range.
It feels like it feels an old school game where you start not as a heroic character class, you start as a peasant or the rat catcher. It very much feels like a Warhammer Fantasy. I'm a rat catcher. I'm not a knight. I'm not a soldier. I'm the rat catcher to begin with.
In this case, though, we're wandering around the desert in a lightly armed Zanussi washing machine, basically. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, the artwork again is. I really like the stuff in here. I just like the.
The color work is fantastic. The chapter stuff, the color work's beautiful. Line work,
I'm completely opposite to Casey. I absolutely found these line illustrations fantastic and really inspiring.
Yeah,
And the number of them available is pretty big, isn't it?
there's loads. There's loads.
got
So
There's
yeah.
loads
Once
you
you
can
go
look at,
all
yeah.
through the tech levels, there's a lot of mechs to choose from.
there are
Yeah.
36 chassis in the base game. Again,
Yeah.
going through.
And then
1, 2, 3.
each has 3 different variants.
Actually, it's more. Because some have got. So, for example, Tech 2 has got 7 different types of mechs. So yeah, there's loads, and they've got quite cool names like Atlas, Brawler, that sort of stuff. Call back to BattleTech type stuff in there as well.
And they're all customizable, aren't they?
Oh yeah,
Biggest issue there.
Squeeze a 50 cal into the machine.
Biggest issue is you've got to upgrade your own crawler before you can actually start producing tech level
Yes.
stuff, which is high enough.
We only got tech level 2 in a 10-session campaign. We had some narrative excuse. We got to use some T4 mech bays. Not quite the right word, but
Yeah.
people understand that. And we stole higher level tech. It just meant that when those mechs are damaged, we can't repair them at home because our crawler's not good enough for it. Beyond the minutiae of mechs and pilots, the concept of the game of finding salvage and stuff and having that as your metagame currency and is really cool. But yeah, and the mechs, again, you can trade them down. We lost mechs. We left them out in the desert when we had to run away.
it's all part of the fun, isn't it? So there's loads of chassis. The heart of it is around, as you said, Matt, the systems and the modules. So I'm going to go around and see favourite system and or module. Okay, I'm going to start with Sam, because I know what Sam's going to say. So Sam, tell us about your favourite.
I might surprise you. Oh, I know. It's the Mechapult, which is basically you load a bit of scrap into it and launch it, and then you've got a D20 table to see what actually happens.
It can be utterly brilliant or completely terrible. And
Well, one, the Mechapult explodes and is destroyed, dealing damage equal to 2 times the tech level scrap to the mech, every mech within close range.
Fun.
Nice.
Fun and games. So what's the best one on that table?
20, isn't it? A dense ball of concentrated scrap hits the target with a catastrophic force, dealing damage equal to 6 times the tech level of the scrap you've launched.
So if you get a bunch of like high-tech circuit boards, that will do far more damage than chucking a massive bin at somebody. All right, that's cool. Who wants to go next?
Chainsaw.
Chainsaw, yeah.
But that was because the little meat mechs that attacked us really couldn't cope with it.
When you say meat mechs, dudes on horses. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the quadrupedal meat mechs. They didn't stand a chance.
Yeah, you quite enjoyed that, didn't you? Yeah, it's almost you got a bit of a grudge against those little guys, didn't you, at one point? So
They were trying to wipe us out.
yeah, they're asking for it, weren't they? That's all I can say.
I like my railgun. Well, I haven't used it too much, but it's a big freaking railgun. We've got swarmed with all these guys on horses. It makes red mist out of them.
When it hits, they've gone at that point, haven't they?
Yeah.
All right, that's quite cool. And yeah, so as I say, I think you're right, Matt. I think it really scratches that sort of Car Wars itch. So if you want to spend time pouring through and trying to come up with within your limited constraints, an optimal build, but also it's I can't wait till I can get X. So there's a real impetus to actually go out and get stuff. You don't get really good stuff up front. So, it is what it is.
I think it's good in that progression that you want your crew sheet, for talking about Blades in the Dark, your crawler to advance so you can get better tech.
Yeah.
And you want to go and loot stuff to pay for that better tech, which is a great motivation. The problem is using that tech and using those mechs is not that satisfying when you use them in play.
But
Does that make sense?
that's the mechanic though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in fact, we'll talk about crawlers and then we'll jump into core rules, because that's going to be a conversation, isn't it? So let's talk about crawlers first. All right. Okay, so as you say, you are a member of Salvage Union. Everyone's on the same level. Yeah. A community. Yeah, everyone's working in collaboration. And so as a group, what you do is you choose a crawler type. And again, there's a lovely table, a little flowchart which shows you how to do this. So you choose a crawler type, which is, again, you can have things like, what can you have? An AI crawler, like with an advanced intelligent AI on board. What else can you have?
Engineering.
Yeah, exceptional engineering. Yeah, okay. You can have all-terrain locomotion as well. So essentially, you've got different things you can choose from, and you don't buy modules for your crawler and systems like you do with a mech. So the way it works is you start off, you go on a mission, or you go out and try in the waste to try and salvage. You go around and you meet the people who live there and usually blow them up and steal their stuff, or maybe even talk to them sometimes. You get some salvage and then you come back, and then you go into what you call downtime. Your crawler is not ever really in danger. You obviously could have the potential for combat. If your crawler goes, then that's it, that's game over. But when you're back on your crawler and you go into downtime, then you can do things like you can train, you can build new equipment within the constraints of your tech level of your crawler. But also what you have to do is you have to pay upkeep. So I think it's 5 salvage per downtime of the tech level of your crawler. So it starts at 5 level tech 1. Then if you go, and once you've paid basically 30 scrap, you go to the next level, and then tech 2, and then so on, 3, 4, 5, 6. But obviously the upkeep is an awful lot more, and also if you don't pay it, your crawler will start to degrade over time. I quite like that in terms of just the conceit about your home base, and you're trying to develop it and improve it. So you can populate it with NPCs, like you've got Attenborough, who's the old guy who hangs out in the cafe and knows stuff. So you get to talk to him about rumours about other parts of the world that you're in. What do you guys think?
I like having some NPCs. Having a home base has been popularized quite a bit now in a lot of RPGs. Having a crew sheet from Blades, which is great. The players can contribute to a central thing. That's great. But this doesn't scratch that itch. It didn't feel, apart from paying maintenance on it, the crawler itself wasn't that interesting. Get into a high tech level so you could use high tech. Yeah, that's more interesting. But that, I didn't associate that with the crawler. Yeah.
I agree with absolutely everything John just said. It's just a bit of meh. Do we need it? I don't know.
Yeah, but again,
it's a mechanic, isn't it? It's a mechanic in order for you to repair.
It's an abstract, a bit like a sort of cutscene in a PC game, isn't it? Between levels where you can change your kit before you go on to the next level. And
it's not even a quest hub, but it is the player hub effectively. But I just don't think it does a very good job of. It's not that it doesn't do a bad job; it just doesn't do a particularly evocative job of it, I think.
But again, I suppose that's where, as the GM and also as the players, if we wanted to make it more of a thing, actually it's up to us. So they give lots of space for us to put lots of our role play opportunities. We can populate it, we can do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but that's not the core part of the game, is going out and getting salvage. So I think it feels a bit like Vampire Masquerade. You're meant to have feeding scenes so you can see how each player character might feed and stuff, but you never do that because you're doing it as a group and you want to go out and you want to engage with the main plot, which for this is salvaging. So having downtime RP sessions, I always find it difficult in any sort of mission-based game that we have, and you have that cadence of mission then downtime, mission then downtime. Downtime becomes a very mechanical discussion, shall we say, and then when you're out in the field, that's when you do the RP side, so you miss that with the crawler because you're not at the crawler when you're in that mission-based part of the game. Does that make sense?
No, it does completely. And I think if you wanted to make downtime more of a role-playing experience with a bit of world building in that, it would be purely narrative. And I think like I said, it's not every game's for everybody. I think we're enjoying the game for what it is, and we've got within the constraints of the game. But if we wanted to just sit and spend a whole session just narratively talking about what's happening in the crawler, you could do it and that'd be fine. And again, but there's no rules for that. It's just you could do that. Maybe it's just the fact it's not the sort of thing that we enjoy. So I don't know.
The game sessions aren't set up like that, are they?
No.
The game sessions are you're getting from point A to point B.
Yeah. And there's an overarching sort of meta plot that in Rainmaker, in the series that we're playing through, it's generally goes in that direction, but it's pretty light, I would say.
Yeah. We could do tons of role playing if we wanted to, but it's just we're just trying to move the game on a bit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to spend.
Yeah. There's not a lot of game in it in that part. There's no game. That's a choice you can make, but there's no dice rolls, for example. None of the abilities would influence it specifically. So we've talked about your pilot, we've talked about the mech, we've talked about the crawler, so these are the ways you interface with the world. And let's talk about the rules, because after all, it's a game. Okay, so core rules, pretty basic, in as much as it's a D20. Okay, so on a 20, you've nailed it. You've done it really well. You might get a bonus effect, do more damage, whatever. 11 to 19, success. Happy days. Good. 6 to 10, you've done something, you've succeeded, but at a cost. as a tough choice. And it gives you a whole list of tough choices, things that so you've hit one of your systems is damaged or something. 2 to 5, failure. All right, you failed. That's the end of that. You face a setback, which is basically, as the GM, I choose. You don't make a choice. I just choose something that's bad that's happened. And then 1 is a cascade failure. Something's suffered terribly wrong. And really, that's the resolution mechanic. Okay? And it's very open about rulings, not rules. That's it. You only roll once. Okay? So you're only supposed to be able to roll once. And when you're in a mech, you can push. So basically you can re-roll a ability, or whether you've shot to hit in combat or whatever it might be, but your mech gains heat. So every time you get heat, you then have to roll to see if you've overheated and all that sort of stuff. But really the core mechanic is that.
It's effectively just a random roll. Yeah.
Agree completely. It's very swingy in that regard. There's no well, you can push when you're in the mech, but there's nothing else that's going to modify the roll in your favour or to your detriment other than GM fiat, which I suppose suits a narrative style, but
Yeah.
And it does make it feel pretty much random.
Yeah.
Blows with the wind.
Yeah. I mean, when we talked about pilots, talked about things like mottos, so things you always say, because that's what you'll say. Your background, and what was the other thing? Keepsake, yeah, okay. In the game, the way it's written down is that sort of once per mission, actually going out doing stuff, you can call on your background, whatever that might be, or your call sign, and you can re-roll. That's it. Other than that, there's no re-rolls other than this push mechanic. If you're in a mech, if you're out of mech, you can't do that. And they say, actually, that they don't want a push mechanic. They don't want advantage or disadvantage or anything like that. So in our game, what I said was just to give a little bit of differentiation, that if you've got a background as a sniper or a salvage or whatever, in any situation where that is relevant, you get a reroll, which is a bit like what they do in Barbarians of Lemuria. So you have like things you can good at, and if you can talk your way around the GM and say, actually, this is relevant, you get an extra dice or whatever it might be. But that's the only way, other than your abilities, that's the only way you get that differentiation.
Dice rolls are reserved for risky situations with interesting consequences, unless you're in combat, of course, where you have to roll. You've got no options.
All the time.
And really, if you can avoid making a dice roll, avoid it at all costs. Chance of failure is pretty high.
Yeah. So they talk about the limitations and appeal of the push mechanic. If you're in your mech, which if you're out of mech, you don't get that, as we say. Actually, they say it's not very appealing. But they say, so the designers say, it's a risk-reward decision for the push. It's far more interesting than a simple advantage-disadvantage system. And they didn't want any situations where players could argue for advantage. Although, to be honest, I've just built that back into the game anyway. So there you go. I've broken the game already.
I think that the push mechanic is overly for a very simple dice system, which is very uninteresting. They then add quite a harsh penalty to players. You not only do you gain 2 heat on your mech, but then you have to make an overheat roll. So I consume a resource, and then I have to make a roll as if I had consumed my entire resource of that. Normally, guns will build up heat, and you don't roll until you get to your heat cap. But pushing it, you roll anyway. It's a bit like Pathfinder 2e with hero points. I push the roll, I just get a reroll. It doesn't mean that I succeed. I'm going to push it and roll again, and just as badly, I rolled a crit fail.
Take the second roll, don't you?
It's still swingy as hell. It doesn't actually say, okay, I'm good at this, let me do it. It's just another random dice roll. And again, we want to avoid rolling dice, it feels.
Yeah, and the designers wanted to avoid that complexity. So they didn't want skills or stats or anything, because they wanted to keep it as simple as possible. So think of it this way. The way I'm thinking about it is the dice is not to resolve situations. The design is to generate complexity, to generate things going wrong. That's how it seems, because it's not a resolution mechanic. It's how does it go? Is it go badly or does it go well? Are you in a more complex situation or less complex?
But the absence of any sort of traits or differentiation means I'm going to jump from this tower and land on top of the mech, climb this mech, and I could do it, anyone could do it, and there's no differentiation between any of us doing it. Because of that, it's entirely random as to whether anyone succeeds, purely down to
You've got a 25% chance of dying in that case, haven't you?
Yeah, so the design thing says They aim to discourage dice rolls when clever narrative solutions can be found. Yeah, that's great, but how are you going to do that in combat?
It feels like they don't want combat to be a major part of this game. But it sounds like they don't see combat as a major part of their game because they want to see salvaging and clever salvage solutions. And you'll go there's a field of turret, like red laser turrets we've had. Don't just go and walk up and shoot them. Find some way clever to get around them to deactivate them. That I feel should be their intent. And half the mech systems aren't guns, so it's not that all the mechs are just gun bunnies. They're not. Both Sam and Matt had very little guns, especially our starting mech. My starting mech, all I had was a industrial crusher claw, which was meant to be salvaging, but I could run up and crush other mechs with it. It feels like this isn't actually a combat game, largely. And at this point, if you're going to have creative narrative play, that you want a system like Fate, where you have some keywords that you can, and almost you do. You have your background, you have your motto, you have your keepsake. They're your keywords. My background was a recon soldier. I was trying to do sneaky stuff and to recon stuff and to snipe. But it sounds like effectively that's what you call on. I'm a recon soldier, GM. Can I do this? Can I not roll? Can I just say my character's competent in it? But then at the same point, later on, I took an actual ability from the scout class called Gather Intelligence, which literally allowed me to avoid making any rolls and just get questions answered from the GM on a location to scout.
I think you're right about the whole thing about combat, because they do talk about, I say, it's abstract ranges. So we'll talk a little bit about combat in a second, but it is very much they want theatre of the mind. We didn't do that because I'm not a theatre of the mind kind of guy. I like tokens and maps and stuff, just because I know where everything is in space. But again, the D20 is it's not a resolution mechanic. It's a what happens next mechanic, which is
That's weird.
I like medium to high crunch games. I'm quite comfortable with that. This is not that game.
I think if I wanted to do a narrative mech game, I don't have experience with this particular variant, but I would run Beam Saber, which is a Blades in the Dark hack, because Blades in the Dark is the best narrative system I know really for this sort of thing. Beam Saber is the mech version of that. Your mechs in that system do have traits that you can call on, but Blades in the Dark still has characters that have different strengths and weaknesses.
Forge in the Dark there's a lot of subsystems, so it's a narrative game, but it's not light on system, is it? That's the thing.
You've got lots of options, but it's still relatively light. But it's having my character or my mech how I've chosen to develop it can still have some outcome on the roll. If I make Ghost as a Beam Saber, I can have Stalk at 2 points. So at least I get 2d6 to roll against on the core Blades mechanic. So I don't have to roll 0 dice and pick the lowest. I can roll 2 dice and pick the highest. I have some agency as a player to develop my character to do what I want them to be good at.
Get you.
I want to portray the recon soldier, but in this system I can't. I can narrative it, and great. If they want to do a narrative system, that's fine. But if you do a narrative system, you don't need a 300+ page rulebook full of mech technical systems.
Yeah, it's an interesting beast, I think, Salvage in terms of how it works. And as we're talking it through, I'm thinking actually it's almost like if they've been upfront about saying this is not a resolution, this is just a how do we make your lives more complicated role, which would fit with what you were saying, Sam. So that's the core mechanic. There's pushes if you're in mechs, not if you're outside mechs, that's that. Some re-rolls, but not many in the core game, although we've made it a bit more common. Combat, again, it's relatively straightforward. So you have a group initiative. So you roll again, the same D20. Sometimes it could be that the play characters go first, or it could be that it's got that sort of you go, I go situation. But it's relatively straightforward. Ranges, close, medium, long, and far. That's it.
I was going to say, that's quite standard in a lot of games now.
Yeah.
Star Wars uses it, Warhammer, Age of Sigmar uses it. But I will say, though it's not designed for VTT, we used it. And we found in other systems that use the abstract range banding, battle maps are still useful so you have a general idea of where you are. It's still useful having a map for that.
In combat, there are different actions. So free actions, there's a turn action which can take a minute, shooting somebody or moving a range band. A short action can be sort of like 10 minutes if you are salvaging, for example. A long action is an hour. And then you have downtime actions which take a week. So really pretty straightforward as a combat system. So you got your structure points. When they get down to 0, you roll critical damage. I think it's quite hard for characters to die in this because you also get things like escape pods and that sort of stuff. Even if you do go
Can
down
build
to,
your mech without them.
you can build them
It's
without a
not
form of
advised.
locomotion as well if you wanted
Yeah.
to. It's, again, not advised unless you want to be carried around by Chunky Boy Extreme or something. Basically, if you go down to 0 hit points as a pilot, you roll for critical injuries. In downtime, all of your hit points come back. They all come back, no problem. If you have critical injuries or minor or major injuries, you have to go to a tech level 3 or 4 med bay to be able to heal. Otherwise, you carry them for a little while and they reduce your maximum number of hit points.
Once you get into the tech 4, 5, and 6, suddenly those critical injuries then are irrelevant effectively. They're not a long-term...
Yep.
You're just going to get them healed every time.
Yep.
Is it one of those systems where the designers also want to keep you more so in the bottom half of the game, which is not uncommon, let's be honest, in a lot of ttrpgs, and that isn't any different at that point, really, is it?
Yeah, you're in no better off if you're in a tech, let's say tech 4 mech, and you're a pilot who takes a couple of minor injuries. Your hit points go down or your maximum hit points go down while you're carrying them. But as you say,
you can't be med packed while on
yeah,
mission.
maybe. Well, maybe you can. I don't know. There might be a system in there that does that. But yeah, I don't know. I think combat's all right. It's quite relatively quick when we've played it, I think.
Yeah, it's quick, but it's uninteresting. I didn't enjoy all the horsemen. That I think because they were actually really effective against our mechs and did quite a lot of damage, and I found that
enjoyed that.
Again, jarring. It was very jarring from a narrative world building. These effectively 40k Rough Riders were going against mechs, and they were actually not kicking our butt, but they were doing a lot of damage, more so than the mechs we fought.
Yeah,
which was very jarring from going back to a world building point of view. It's like, why are these guys a threat to us? We can literally step on them.
Yeah, if you can catch them, that's the thing, isn't it?
I didn't find the combat as tactical as I would have hoped for in mechs. It doesn't really matter what you're doing; you're just got to get within range and
keep shooting. Yeah. I did introduce concept of cover, which isn't in the core rules. Just so if you got into a built-up area, you could choose to. Again, it was a roll, whether you're able to take cover or not, in the spirit of utter randomness. But I did a little bit of crunch in that because, again, that's something that I prefer in my games.
I think that's saved us a couple of times when we could have got properly battered. But managing to dive into a dilapidated shed
just in time. When I talked about doing the cover mechanic, I remember putting it out on the Discord server and saying, what do you want to do? And someone went, oh no, it's not a bother. And then the next scenario, use this all the time. Okay, all right. So again, core rules, they do the job. It's relatively straightforward. I think what I will say as the GM, so that the mechs are statted out in exactly the same way as the player character mechs. You don't have to worry about heat. Actually, you can or energy points. You can pretty much do what you want every turn. Now, I tend to track that just to keep it fair, if you like. But what it does mean is it's that whole thing about having a fully statted out Rune Lord's opponent in RuneQuest. You just got to remember a lot of stuff. And if you've got lots of mechs, then there's a lot of things going, actually, I've forgotten about their multi-attack targeter and stuff. So there's a lot to keep track of, which I don't appreciate that as a GM. So
I will say, as a GM, I find systems that have an equivalency between NPCs and players actually quite distracting. As a GM, I want NPCs that are short, sharp stat block. It can be asymmetrical. They don't have to be equivalent to the player character, because when you're trying to run a complex combat for a crunchy game, you don't want that. It strikes me as odd, because this is meant to be a narrative game, and then you've got this crunchy NPCs in combat you're trying to manage.
Yeah,
it feels like they had one design goal, and then they did most of that, but then they veered off with combat, getting way more crunchy and complex.
I think it's a good example of you'd have to play it with the designers, I think, to really get an understanding of actually how it's supposed to run, because again, they've obviously got a very clear image in their heads, and they've purposely chosen not to do things that probably we would think actually we'd quite like to see that in a game, but they've said, nope, we want to do that, we don't want to go down that road. But coming back to the complexity of PCs, I think that's where I really appreciate like the D6 table in Mutant Year Zero, where you just roll like an alien. Okay, what does the alien do? You roll D6, so it bites you or runs away or whatever it is. And again, in Jackals does the same thing. You've got like almost like a combat table, so you don't have to worry about all the different systems. It's just roll. This is what it does, and then you can move on to the next bit. Okay, all right, yeah. So combat, crunchy, yet potentially unsatisfying. So,
That's all right.
like I say, not every game's for everybody, and that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So once you've got a tactical head and you've got an idea of what the other mechs can do, it's not too bad. You get to optimal.
I think you get rewarded for being tactical, though. That's the problem. I don't think there's any reward for the most tactical thing we got was okay. They're short range gun turrets. We just stay out of range and hack them or shoot them.
Yeah,
and that's just a shooting gallery. That was the most
not very satisfying.
Okay, all right. So next section, then the book it goes into salvaging. So there's a lot about types of salvage. So basically, when you destroy a mech, you can go along and you can try and salvage some stuff from it. Okay, but again, you roll on a table to see what's left of it after you've blown it up. So it's not that you can strip it down with all the different modules and things. It's chance as to what's left. And again, that's intended to do it that way. And then you also got this thing called area salvaging. So every time you move to a point on a map, there's a limited number of times you can area salvage. So for example, if the place got area salvage 6, you got 6 opportunities. You might find 6 lots of nothing, or you might find 6 lots of Tech 3 scrap or whatever. It's pretty straightforward. I think the most difficult thing you guys had was around cargo capacity early doors. You needed to carry quite a lot of stuff.
But I think we did actually build salvage mechs. I think our later mechs got more combat intense when we did our mech upgrade. Because we had Sam playing the hauler, he could have so much capacity at that point. The rest of us didn't need that. I think early game, like I had my scout, I didn't have any guns, so I just built a salvage mech because I couldn't think of anything else to do. Sam had a lot of capacity and salvage capability. Matt had some rigging and stuff. So it never felt like we were at breaking point. If you were to max out your cargo capacity for your salvage, that then triggers downtime because you want to go back and dump it off. And when, as far as I understand it, as soon as you go back to the crawler, that triggers a downtime episode of a week.
Yeah.
And then you've got to pay for maintenance on your crawler. But maybe you want to do that because you want to try and tick up your tech levels early. If you've got a good salvage, the meta game of getting salvage and upgrading your crawler, but I just don't think it was engaging enough.
Yeah.
Upgrading your base of operations, that's cool. I like that. Ars Magica is one of my go-to games, and that's got the whole Covenant thing. That's everybody contributes to try to make this better, and it makes everybody else better by building the main base up. I love that, but this just...
It's a lot more narrative. There's not so many systems and structures around it.
Yeah.
Did introduce a little bit of accountancy as well with, okay, so we destroyed 5 drones at 2 salvage each, 5 turrets at 1 salvage each, area salvage, me 3, Scarecrow 2, Ghost 2, Sandman 1, Widowmaker 3, 23 salvage. I've got 4 spare slots with Tech 3, and there's a lot of horse trading of, you take the Tech 3 salvage, and basically stood in the desert putting bits of junk into each other's mechs, I think.
And that's, when you say like that, it doesn't sound that exciting.
That's part of the game. I found odd, but the interchangeability of different salvage tech, I found actually a bit unsatisfying. I thought it was going to be more of a challenge because we quite easily traded between tech 1 tech.
So when in the downtime, if you've got 10 tech level 4 pieces of scrap, essentially that's equivalent to 40 level 1. And you can chop and change. Really, it's the amount of scrap units.
Total scrap value.
Exactly, yeah exactly.
I found actually that was a bit of a letdown to me. We upgraded our crawler to Tech 3. We now every downtime need to pay Tech 3 maintenance.
Yeah.
So our Tech 1 and Tech 2 scrap is now less valuable to us. And that, I thought that would add more of a risk that, okay, we're salvaging. We found a load of Tech 1 and Tech 2. That doesn't help us that much. We need to find Tech 3 guys before we go back to base. And that would be a motivation and a drive.
I think you're right. I mean, that's how it is in the base rules. That's the way you do it. But you could, for example, foresee a situation and say, well, actually, we've developed a relationship with a trading post. that deals in Tech 3 scrap. And so therefore, if you take your Tech level 1 and 2 there, you can then trade it up.
But there should be a charge for it. That's what it adds tension. There's no tension to it.
Okay.
If I was going to do that, I was like, you've got a load of Tech 1 and Tech 2, but I'm not going to give you a 1-for-1 ratio on this. No, you're going to pay through the nose to maintain your crawler now.
Yeah. I think that point about you being able to trade in and out, but actually there's a cost to it. Yeah, you could do that. But again, that's not where the designers of the game are. They want you to, that you could do it, but it would become narrative. You'd have to create your own. And you could do that quite easily.
Narrative. That's the thing, but they said they want to encourage narrative, theatre of the mind, and then what I would consider good opportunities to add narrative tension.
But they
would there.
But again, devil's advocate, they would say actually you do that yourself if you want. They're not going to provide you rules for it.
But the problem is that one of the crawler archetypes is a trader crawler. One of your main archetypes is to wheel and deal salvage and stuff. So again, having that would be an interesting thing of, okay, because I'm good at trading, I can get higher level tech, higher level scrap quickly, so I can quickly advance.
Some of that's down to abilities as well, because as a whole of character, I can select core abilities which give me expert salvager, for example, which give me extra salvaging, things like that.
But at least you're going to find something, which is good.
Yeah. And for reference, for people listening, a player character starts with 20 scrap.
So it's not a huge amount.
20 tech 1 scrap.
It's all learning. Any thoughts generally about salvaging before we move on? It's the core of the game.
It takes up 6 pages in the book.
Yeah.
Even though it's the core of the game.
Absolutely.
It's 350 pages.
Cool. Okay. All right. So 6 pages is the core of the game, plus roll a d20. That essentially is it. The book itself goes on to some mediator advice, which is useful. It talks about setbacks. Certainly as a GM, I think that having more examples of setbacks would be useful. So the idea is that if you have a tough choice, then you choose between a couple of these setbacks, things that can go wrong. I think because a lot of them are combat focused, some of them are a bit narrative-y. I think having some more would be helpful, because you do roll a lot of setbacks in the game because of the mechanic. I think
strangely there's a lot of tables in this game, but not for the tough choices.
Yeah,
and a big D20 table really useful there.
Really helpful, I think, and that's one of the things that
more narrative focused. That's what they're going for, but they're missing the tables for it.
But just as a GM, in terms of just the load, having to think, because often I'll say to you, "Oh, can you think of a setback?" Because I'll just get fed up of thinking about it.
It's okay though, having a collaborative experience.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
You always gave us a choice of 2. Was that part of the core rules, or was that?
Yeah, that's tough choices. So if you get a tough choice, you choose one of these things happens, or you might just get, if you roll particularly low, you just get a setback. And I'll just say, here's a. And again, personally, I prefer to roll for that rather than just, because I could be completely overwhelming in terms of biased. That's not, I just like to make your life more interesting, Sam. That's all it is.
You're a fan of the players.
Fan of the players, of course I am. Yeah. So it talks about balancing combat, i.e., don't. Yeah, it's okay.
Did it go into much detail on point crawls in general? I know hex crawls and I know traditional like mission-based scenarios, but I haven't done many point crawls.
Yeah.
Does it actually give much advice?
So what it does is it gives you a couple of sections. So it gives you a bit on running a campaign. So it gives you some out. So if you don't go and buy any of the sort of the campaign supplements, how to build a campaign mode. So basically it just says, okay, this is how you do it. So it says, name the region, create some threats, create a couple of settlements, some areas, put a bit of scrap out there, and some names, and that's it. Typically a map will have various regions, and within that there'll be some areas. So areas are your points that you travel between. To get from one region to another, it takes about a week. So normally that would be your downtime thing. And travelling between points in a region, if you're in a mech, takes... It's an hour. It's an hour. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, and theoretically, they can be big areas, and it can take you 10 minutes to travel around within them. But we get into that. So it's pretty high level. They give you an example of how to put a campaign together, and then they give you an example of a campaign which is called Downing in the Atticos, which is actually quite a cool little sort of couple of areas and a bit of place to wander around in. But yeah, there's a little bit in there. It talks about scrap progression, which is basically put loads of scrap out there because they'll need it, essentially. And then there's a list of denizens of the wasteland. So it talks about things like reaction rolls, which are your favourites, Sam. So you just roll randomly to see if people like you or not. Morale rules.
No matter what role playing you put into it, we found it's a random roll that
Yeah.
you can't influence.
Yeah.
So
Unless you've got a
What's the point of
background
role-playing?
that comes into it.
They just choose the most appropriate result, maybe
that's right.
because of the role play,
Keep
because
listening.
of the narrative drive.
But again, I'm a beneficent GM, so if it was just down to me, I'd say yeah, that's fine. But then you'd have an easy ride, and it would be no fun then, would it? There'd be no challenge. Because I'm the player's biggest fan. Okay, there's a bestiary in here as well. They're called Denizens of the Wasteland, which again just talks a little about how
Quite
to
a
run
really
PCs.
interesting bit, actually.
Yeah, it's quite some good stuff in there.
We haven't encountered
Yeah.
one actually, have we? Any sort of weird mutant beast?
None of the big beasts.
Yeah, they were pretty bad. You are wandering around where there is what they call a hill worm, which is basically a worm out of Dune. And so the area,
come across it.
yeah, so the area you're in, or the region you're in, group of areas, every time there's a combat, at the end of the combat, you roll to see if the hill worm turns up. And then you can try and run away, but again, there's a retreat table, which is a random roll as to whether you manage to get away or not. So it could be that 3 of you manage to leg it off the edge of the map and 2 of you get stuck behind. That would be legendary if and when that happens. But yeah, it does give you quite a lot of options in terms of stuff, and the artwork's quite nice as well. It's different to it's more anime in style.
These biotitans are absolutely beastly.
They are filth, aren't they?
80 structure points.
Oh God!
50, 96 structure points. 215.
Well, at that point, from what I understand of the game, and I'm piloting a Tech 4 mech with a very big gun, that would be a pointless fight to me. They're not meant to be fought at that point, even that smallest one, because I've got a Tech 4 gun, a rail gun, which does I think 9 structure damage, which is a lot. Your 50 cal machine gun does 2 structure points. You can only fire 1 weapon per round unless you get some again. I think it's like a Tech 4 module on your mech to fire 2 or something like that. So trying to shred out 100 odd points of structure is just not happening.
Yeah, and this tyrant, of course, regains 10 structure points every round.
Yeah, no, I would just
no.
vacate. That's not a combat encounter. That is, you are a peasant. That is a dragon. You run away.
It's like starting out Cthulhu, isn't it? Basically, what's the point in that? You're in a hit.
The face of Biotitan, for goodness sake.
Good fun. But anyway, there's plenty of stuff in there to go. I'll definitely put that in the game, and my players will not be happy with me.
Do a runner.
Yeah, exactly. In which case, what's the point having them? Following that, there's the Downing of the Atticus, which is like a sort of a small series of games you can run. There's a big load of keywords and traits. Keywords and traits are a big thing in this, actually.
Were they? I didn't notice that.
Yeah. So things like, we talked a lot about things that are hot, or things that are
for equipment.
Equipment, heat spike, etc. But yeah, it's nicely laid out. They're all there at the back. Again, it's something else to get your head around. Keywords, so we talked about that. And
I love the artwork. I'm just scrolling through the book just after that NPC section. 301. There's some very post-apocalyptic urban environments, which I didn't actually get the feel for. I didn't get much of a feel for urbanized. For the Rainmaker module we're doing, it felt mostly like we're in the wilderness. To my mind.
Yeah, you haven't. There's quite a bit you haven't explored yet. It's all good fun. There's an index which is pretty comprehensive, which is quite cool, and some quick reference tables which do the job. We've talked about the things that are challenging about the game, or things that perhaps we haven't really appreciated properly up front. What sort of players, what sort of play group do you think this game is designed for?
I think given the fairly simple play mode of it and the core mechanic, it's probably really good for a pick up and play at maybe a con, or if you've got some sort of pre-gen mechs and the like. So it's probably, I'd say, pretty straightforward to grasp the rules, but you need people narrative game inclined rather than crunch inclined.
Yeah, given the fact that the game is predicated on getting scrap and advancing and getting more cool stuff. Obviously, in a one shot, you can give people tech level mechs of whatever you like. Do you think it's more suited to a one shot, or do you think it works as a sort of series of games as well?
I think that's what I was going to get onto. It's set up for that progression of gather scrap, build up your mechs, and so on and so forth. So I think as a one shot, its drawback would be that it doesn't have enough meat to the system to be able to take you from here's point A, you need to get to point B. I'm not sure there'll be enough to it for a one shot, despite the simple sort of rule system, perhaps.
Cool. So it's neither fish nor fowl, then, isn't it, really?
You'd have to be a good accountant to be able to play this game. It maybe needs a spreadsheet or two just to keep track of all the salvage and how you're going to use it, keep track of your structure points and how you're going to maybe increase your mech in future. So you'd have to be quite, I think, technically minded and be quite interested in the mechanics of that to do it. It's not a great game for those who like to sit around and chat role-playing for hours. It wants you to do it, but there's just no way of doing it properly.
I wouldn't say it's no way, it's just more of a challenge. What do you think, John? Who's this game pitched at, do you reckon?
The designers wrote it for themselves is the nice way to say them.
That's okay.
I don't understand the target audience for this game. It's got a lot of inconsequential crunch that get in the way of a narrative game. So I don't know who the target audience is for it. Sorry.
No, that's all right. We did play a game. Do you remember, I think, Sam, did you play Nibiru with us? Was it yourself played Nibiru?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's, again, it's an example of a game which I think is beautiful in as much as it looks great, and there are supplements, and obviously there's a market out there because they're making more of this stuff. So with Xanadu, or Nibiru rather, I think the issue was that the only people who really understood how to run the game were the people who written the game. And I think it's quite hard to get that across, certainly for Salvage Union, in the same way as it is for Nibiru. Lovely game, looks great, challenging to play, or to at least feel that you're replicating the experience that the designers want you to have. Having said that, not every game's for everyone, so I think people out there some people will love it. I know loads of people have got it already, but it'd be interesting to hear what other people experiences are. So write in, send us on the back of a stamped self-addressed envelope, or whatever it is he used to say in the olden days. But all right. So on that, any final thoughts before we wrap it? In that case, I think we've rattled through it pretty effectively.
Not taxing.
No.
It doesn't require too much brain power.
No.
The VTD helps handle a lot of the crunchiness for us.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Yeah, it makes life a lot easier. What do you think, Matt? Any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I've enjoyed it, despite some of the foibles of the system.
Yeah.
I quite like the world such as it is that you've created and we've partially destroyed, or at least parts of it.
We've created it together, haven't we?
Yeah, it's been good fun, but I agree with the various other comments about the swinginess of the random rolls and what have you.
Yeah, it's a feature, not a bug, I would say. All right, on that note then, have a good evening, and I'll see you soon.
Cool.
Cheers.
All right,
Everyone.
cheers then. Thanks a lot. Thank you for listening to another exploration of my gaming vexes. If you've got any thoughts you'd like to add to what you've heard here, or a gaming vex of your own you'd like to offer up for discussion, you can get in touch with me on Blue Sky via orlanth.bsky.social or via Discord at orlanth.vex. Until next time, may all of your games be free of vexatiousness and be excellent to each other always.